Good?
Yep.
Okay. Prostitution control in this country is a revolving door policy in which prostitutes will be picked up by the police and systematically go back to working on the streets to make up for the money they lost during jail time. Prostitution is an issue that has not been considered for policy reform in over 2 decades, but the problems of the old policy still occur today. There are social and economical losses that can be directly attributed to prostitution control. A significant problem with the current prostitution control system in the U.S. is the increasing amount of disease that is spreading because of the prostitutes that have unprotected sex. According to Paul Armentano of the Future of Freedom Foundation, having sex with a prostitute is the 3rd most common way for an American male to contract the AIDS virus. But the studies show that this is because of the fact that it is made illegal. Studies in Europe show that venereal disease rates go up when prostitution is illegalized and go down when it's legalized. The reasoning behind this is that prostitutes are more likely to go through treatment and reporting if they're not under fear of arrest. Also, as reported by James Bovard of the Future of Freedom Foundation, that UC Berkeley's School of Public Health studied prostitutes in Nevada where certain counties have prostitution legal and contained in brothels. As of 1989, not one prostitute is reported as having AIDS, but there are 6 prostitutes that were reported who do work in the streets that were infected. This is because these brothels have an economic incentive to keep their women in good health, so they provide a good service. The second problem is that prostitution control is economically wasteful. According to the Journal of Justice Statistics, there are 90,000 annual arrests for violation of prostitution laws, and an unknown number of arrests for loitering or disorderly conduct. Specific records to a nationwide cost analysis are not available, but a study of the country's 16 largest cities figured that they spent a total of $120 million in 1985 enforcing laws against prostitution. 5 of these cities spent more on the laws than on health services and hospitals. From the amounts given by just a few cities, we can deduce how much enforcing these laws burdens taxpayers. Several cities that have these laws implemented do not seem to realize the value these laws possess. The San Francisco Crime Committee stated in 1971 that spending on prostitution control essentially buys nothing of positive nature. Atlanta's task force on prostitution concluded that its spending was a waste that burned the courts and lowered police morale. All police control does is contain prostitution to a small area, and then make prostitutes go to prison, pay a fine, and then be displaced somewhere else where they continue their service. It is reported by Ronald Weitzer of the Sociological Quarterly that costs are not offset by the revenue of conviction. He averages that fines average around $100, while cost per arrest is about $2,000. It is displayed the kind of irrational thinking that was put into these policies and why it is so wasting taxpayers' money. One of the most traditional views of prostitution as a criminal act comes from the idea that society views it as immoral and should not be condoned by the law. But whether or not the act is viewed collectively as morally unacceptable should not be the basis of the law, or any law for that matter. Laws are put in place to maintain freedom and order in society. If we choose to accept the idea that government has the right to legislate morality, there are significant studies which refute the idea that society views prostitution as immoral. Only 14% of those responding to a 1977-1978 survey in Boston believe prostitution is immoral. And 69% of 15,000 respondents in a survey by a Californian assemblyman favored legalization. On a more nationwide scale, a Harris survey, national survey, revealed that only 46% of the respondents thought prostitution did more harm than good. Moral arguments cannot be used in the process of law. They constitute biased ideas of what is good and what is not good for humanity. But laws must be made based on rational intellect and fair judgment toward what is good for humanity. A significant moral issue that can be attributed to the topic of prostitution is the infringement on people's rights that these laws start. The government must understand that people have the right to do as they please with their bodies, since they exclusively own them. If both parties agree to the exchange of service and barter, no crime according to the Constitution has taken place. As stated in the Constitution of the United States, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that the security of these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government, and that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of these people to alter or abolish it, or institute new government. This clearly states that every person has the right to do as they please, as long as they do not infringe on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of others, and that prostitution does not infringe on any of these. The next problem with prostitution control is the fact that the concern is not really generated towards prostitution itself, but the problems that the street prostitutes bring to society. A group of 28 neighborhood and business groups declared that street prostitution poses a very serious threat to the integrity of San Francisco's business and residential communities. Criminal traffickers and pimps can be attributed to the public solicitation that society finds so offensive because they are forced to work in a visible and mobile manner in order to not to stay in one place for too long to avoid arrest, and risk losing customers that are working in an isolated area where not advertised because of risk of arrest. If this risk of arrest was gone and it was a legitimate business, then prostitutes could stay in one spot and use advertising to bring customers. Many complaints are made, including prostitutes flagging down customers, fighting in the streets, public drug use, public sex acts, and used condoms and syringes being littered. Not to mention, children tend to be witnesses of these indecent decencies. And the customers cause as much of these problems, as much of the problems as the prostitutes, and are more open to public shame and identification. An easier way to deal with this would be to decriminalize prostitution to allow prostitutes to do less public forms of solicitation. Prostitution must be first legalized in order for private businesses to contain their businesses in more secluded areas. The last main issue with prostitution laws is that they do not address the serious crimes that go along with prostitution. A study by a researcher named Gebert found that of 127 prostitutes, only 4% were found to be drug addicts, which is a completely different figure than most advocates of illegal prostitution have postulated before. Not only that, but these other studies categorize any substance use as drug addiction, which is complete misuse of data. Because of the need for pimps to rely on, because of prostitution being illegal, prostitutes end up always coming back to their pimps because they go to jail, they need to be bailed out, or they need if a violent customer harasses them, they need to be protected. And the pimp is typically the source of the prostitute's drug addiction. One study showed that drug-addicted prostitutes compared to other groups of prostitutes have pimps. That's to say there's less prostitution-related violence in places like Germany and Holland, where it's legal, gives large support to the idea that prostitution is not inherently crime-related activity. According to an independent study, women working as call girls or escorts are relatively free from any form of victimization. The fact is that the current system of control of prostitution cannot work because it simply does nothing to alleviate the negative effects of prostitution. It only wastes money and displaces prostitutes into other areas so they continue to work. Prostitution should be legalized, and regulations should keep it indoor locations and off public areas. Many cities have regarded this idea as an ideal way to keep prostitution because it minimizes the harmful effects of society. With this plan should be health regulations set by the government in which prostitutes working for an agency are given mandatory HIV tests. Increasing pressure on indoor prostitution is a negative effect because then all the prostitutes end up working on the street anyways. In San Francisco, a leader of the community group called Safeguard Streets stated that most of the residents in this community would not be bothered by indoor prostitution, saying, "My gut feeling is that, yes, that would be okay. No one has ever voiced concern over massage parlors or call girls in the area." The Washington, D.C. activist remarked, "People wouldn't be too upset if prostitution went indoors. It's obvious that creating a system of indoor legalized prostitution would be better than completely making prostitution legal.